All right, Tara, take it away.
Hey, so I am Tara Horstmeyer, and as of, 2 weeks ago, I am now the Director of Partner Success at Gravy. But prior to that, I was the SDR Growth Manager, and prior to that, I have done roles in content and sales as well over at Gravy. So that's
Awesome.
me.
It's Friday. You got to give us a fun fact.
Fun fact, I tore my ACL right before my senior season of tennis in high school.
Oh,
and instead of kind of scratching that itch as I grew, I became a sports journalist out of college.
Cool. Wow. Amy, follow that one. Oh, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you, Amy.
I tried muting myself because I was like ruffling papers. No, I can't follow that, Tara. That was too badass. But no, actually, I think I remember us connecting a while back. And because I was talking about the horse thing and everything, and you were telling me about your background in sports journalism, and that's awesome. So yeah, Amy Quick. I'm a little flustered this morning. I tried hot sauce this morning for the hot sauce challenge that's coming up, and my tongue's a little numb and my left eye is like weepy. So this might be a fun one. Yeah, I work for Fortinet. I'm a territory account manager there. I run Mississippi and Alabama territories, and I just got through my first quarter with Fortinet. So I survived, and I'm looking for a strong Q4. So anyone in Mississippi and Alabama wants to buy some firewalls for me, light it up. And a fun fact, I am actually going to be on my way to Sulphur Springs, Texas today, because my daughter is actually taking up the mantle of equestrian. So she's taken off where I left off, and is competing regularly in reining and Western horsemanship and all this fun stuff. So I'll be spending the weekend at a horse show. So that's my fun fact.
Awesome. Chris? I feel like this is not the Chris I know, because you know we always see you with a shirt.
Right. So first disclaimer, it's like my lazy ass Friday, so hence like lazy attire. I got too many people complaining that I don't make enough casual videos, so here's my casual appearance. So let's see, Chris Von Huene, CVH for short. What do I do? Account executive at Xerox. Yes, people still buy copiers. Fun fact, Jesus, I don't know. I can actually cook. I mean, let me just throw that out there. It's on Instagram. If you don't believe me, look up Chris Von Huene. There is pictures of real food.
Love it. Awesome. Patrick.
What's up, everybody? Patrick Downs, part-time podcast host, part-time multidimensional being, you know my shit. Fun fact, we recently closed at Panadoc, the friggin' Wolf of Wall Street. So I've been trying to like sell pens to everybody and it hasn't been working.
Oh, crazy.
I'll buy a pen.
Sold. Jordan Belfort will show up at your house with a pen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'll hand it over to Jonathan, but really quick, I'm Francois Bourdeau. I work for Encore Business Solutions, Microsoft partner selling ERP and CRM solutions. Fun fact, I've got some fingerprints from Scotland Yard in a drawer behind me. Don't ask me how. Right, just leave that hanging. Jonathan.
All right. Well, my name is Jonathan Mahan. I'm an account executive at a company called TubeScience. I was on here with my with Five on Friday when I was with my previous employer, but now that I'm in a new company, I'm trying to master the new pitch and the value proposition. So I figured these guys here can help me out. Fun fact is I live in Colorado, and basically my only hobby other than like eating, sleeping, and working is hiking. And actually this picture here is a place called the Fiery Furnace in Utah. It's one of my favorite places to go. And I got a nice collection here of background photos for my hikes. So throughout this call, I'll just nonchalantly switch backgrounds from time to time. But these are all places I've been, because again, this is really my only hobby outside of just work and hanging out with the family.
Nice. So maybe give us a little context in terms of like what you do, like your role, are you doing a lot of outbound? Are you doing a lot of prospecting, and the typical like ideal customer profile, and then I think you had talked about you want to talk about a pitch. Are we going to do a scenario where it's somebody you've already talked to? Like, is it the first call, or is it you've reached out and they're interested?
Yeah. So the company's called TubeScience. I'm an account executive. At this point, I'm mostly handling inbound inquiries. In the future, I very well may start doing some outbound. In fact, if I had to guess, I probably will start doing some outbound as well. But right now, I'm just handling inbound inquiries because that's all the company has bandwidth for at the moment. But basically what we do is we produce conversion optimized video ads for some of the largest spenders on Facebook and Instagram. So companies that in the past, I'm selling into marketing departments, particularly like growth managers or performance marketers in those companies who are trying to scale their spending and finding a lot of pain points and problems as they start to scale. So we come alongside as a partner to create the video ads and basically produce the creative for them that they need so their company can keep scaling their spending and keep scaling the growth of the company. As far as what I want help with today, I think just kind of getting the value prop down, the pitch, right? So I'm imagining in this situation, I've already done a discovery session with you guys. I've already uncovered your pain points. And now we're shifting gears. I'm saying, okay, let me tell you a little bit about TubeScience. And I'm basically just going into the pitch, right? Explaining why we exist, what's good about us, how we work, and why you should want to work with us. So I don't think it'll take too awful long. I mean, we'll see how it goes. But that's the part that I've, interestingly enough, had a hard time with, right? It's like once you get good at sales, you can kind of do the whole discovery call, let your curiosity lead you thing fairly easily. But then when it actually comes to like getting the value proposition out in clear, concise language, that's actually been a little harder for me. So I spent some time this morning kind of working through what that'll sound like. And
So do you think like a role play, like kind of a phone call, like, maybe Tara or Chris is like somebody who said they're interested and you want to just kind of practice that value prop?
Yep, I think so. Like I said, we'll imagine a scenario we're in a demo basically, and I've already done the discovery, and we've kind of transitioned into talking about TubeScience. But yeah, I'll have some questions and clarifications to ask. So somebody will have to volunteer to be the guinea pig to test me.
Quick question there. Oh, go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
No, I was going to say
I nominate Chris. I love.
I mean, I think Tara and I can just double team it. But quick question before we jump there, because I'm just slightly confused. So if the part we were asking about the value proposition, again, this is the way that I think about it. If you've already mapped out the pains, if you already know the challenges and what they're unable to do currently, and you just match it to your product, in my mind, it's really just saying hey, you're unable to make creative within a week. It's taking you a month. This is what it looks like in a week. And those 3 extra weeks that you're unable to get right now, you can get this kind of viewership, statistically speaking, from working with prior clients. So, you know what I mean? To me, it's a map at that point and just connecting the dots. And then whatever you can't do, it's just hey, I can't do this well. How important is that to you? How does that impact your overall, assessment of a vendor? And just flipping it that way. So I guess that's where I'm just a little confused is value prop to me comes when we're pitching on the phone and getting the meeting. But after I've already uncovered what your challenges are, I'm literally just connecting dots to what my product can do. So maybe it's just me just being, slow as hell on a Friday because I'm casual today and just not thinking fast. But help me understand maybe just a little bit more. So cause I want to make sure I'm actually going to give the right guidance and not just sitting here spinning off something that's not relevant for you.
I think that where I'm at, being new to the company is I have a hard time, it feels like when I'm trying to talk about our company and our value proposition, it feels like I got marshmallows in my mouth and I'm tripping over my words and I just can't quite get it out right. So I want to get to the point where for our most common pain points, which 80% of the time is what's going to be there, I can deliver a pretty standardized pitch of here's the value proposition, how we relate to each of those pain points. And I want to get comfortable with that where I can do that in my sleep. Right. That'll be the next, 30 days, 60 days, however long it takes, and then as I develop more in this role, I'll be able to customize it a bit more based on the person. Because that's kind of what happened in my previous role, right? I started off with pretty generic pitches, but after maybe 90 days, each pitch sounded differently based on the pain points I heard. But at this point, I can't even give the generic pitch, right? I can't even get those words out in a sensible way. So this is kind of entry level stuff. What you're talking about, Chris, is more of, the expert level stuff that I'll get to, maybe 90 days from now, more comfortable.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. That's helpful.
Are you running full deal cycle? Are you your SDR booking your own meetings and stuff too? Or are you mostly getting warm meetings that are already set that are coming to you as an account executive?
So right now with the business model we have, our bottleneck, our most limiting factor is our ability to actually fulfill demand and create the ads. Our most limiting factor is not sales and the number of companies we can stuff in the funnel. So as of right now, the only thing we're doing is just taking inbound leads and referrals. So I am setting my own meetings, but these people are generally coming to us because they were already referred by someone else. They're already vaguely familiar with who we are and what we do. So it's a scenario similar to what it would be if an SDR was setting it for me, even though technically I am setting it myself, but it's a very warm inbound.
Yeah.
So there's still, you feel like you're still in the educational period, right? Like you're still finding out how much do they know and how much are you going to need to like kind of educate them on not only what they do, but also discovering where they're struggling a little bit too. Like that call isn't like that. They haven't been through like an entire process where it's like you've nailed down, like you want this call to be a little bit more on the generic side, right?
Yep. And again, for the purposes of this conversation, we're pretending we're maybe 15 minutes in or 20 minutes into a call where I already did the discovery. And now our discovery is done. And now we're transitioning into, let's talk about TubeScience. And again, we'll keep it fairly generic and high level, right? But these are the pain points I hear the most often. So getting this down like the back of my hand will help me be more confident and fluid in a real conversation where I do have to customize things a bit more.
Yeah. And I think Tara, you had something you wanted to jump in and say too.
No, I was just saying, you know, sitting on like typically there are two kinds of conversations. There's warm referral conversations and there's cold conversations. So the fact that this is already a warm referral conversation, just going to Chris's point too, there's certainly a need to be able to communicate what you do, how you do it, and how it's going to impact them. But I think too, the sooner that we can get you into more of a fluid conversation, so that your pitch it's not just like, here's my 30 to 60 second spiel. I think that is important, but more like, let me break that down and just weave it into our conversation, which I know, like you said, that's farther down the road, but I would love to challenge you to make that as soon as you can, you know, and as soon as you can just piecemeal that together and communicate that well. So you really don't feel like you're pitching, but you're just having a conversation with a warm lead, like a warmish lead. So I'm excited to get you there. I think you'll get there way sooner than 90 days.
Cool. Well, I've been hearing some fussing in the other room. Let me just check real quick, make sure your TV's still on and everyone's still alive, and I'll come back.
Parent life.
He's definitely going to change. He's putting on like a costume, like a superhero costume.
If he comes out all suited up, I'm gonna be pissed off, y'all. I'm just saying, like that's like my forte. So if he comes back with a vest and tie on, like I'm out. I'm gonna sign off ASAP.
Not everybody has the wardrobe you have with like the wigs and shit. So
hey, the hair's still looking good, man. I don't need the damn wig, but I do need some like spandex kind of pants. You know what I mean?
Like the whole time, like I just put on like different pairs of glasses. Nope, where he's good.
No, he's good. All right, that's all I'm staying.
No
apparently.
Superman suit. All right,
Jonathan, we were hoping for a wardrobe change, like maybe a tuxedo or something.
Oh, well, not now you say that. I would have done it if I thought of it. Now I was just getting her some chocolate milk. Generally, chocolate milk buys me some silence.
Totally, I get it.
Ever worked.
Okay, so you're gonna do this. So this is gonna be the second call with Chris is gonna be your prospect, and this is the second call. Is that the role play?
Either the second call or the second half of the first call. Basically, discovery is already done, pain points uncovered. Now I'm just talking about what TubeScience does.
Okay.
Super. Cool. Take it away.
All right. So, Chris, now that I know a little bit more about yourself, I guess I could share a bit about how TubeScience model works. Would that work for you?
Sounds good.
Perfect. So the reason that TubeScience exists is really to help D2C brands that are looking to scale. We're often contacted by companies like yours after they've kind of hit their stride and, you know, in the areas of getting great product market fit, growing a really strong, compelling brand and a strong value proposition. Once they're logistically sound, right, as a business, usually at that point, they start to feel like it's time to take this model they know works and scale it up. And it sounds like that's where you guys are at. Is that right?
Yeah, we're about there.
Cool. So the problem is that generally speaking for these companies, the advertising they did that got them here generally isn't enough to get them there. Whenever you start dramatically increasing spending and scaling up spending on your current existing creative, you'll usually start to see CPA and ROAS metrics start to really suffer. And this problem really manifests itself in two ways. One is that you'll find it's really hard to get an ad that's a hit, right? And that's just simply a function of Facebook's algorithm. In your early days of spending is really good at putting your ads in front of the best fit customers. But as you start to scale up your spend and expand that audience, Facebook has no choice but to put your ads in front of increasingly less and less perfect fits, right? The other thing we see that's related to that usually happens at the same time is that even when you do get an ad that's a hit, it doesn't work for as long, right? You start to see that fatigue and you start to see that churn on the creative a lot sooner, which of course is just a function of, that same ad ends up after a while getting put back in front of the same eyeballs again. And you'll notice that, an ad that used to maybe run for a month or two before it started to fatigue will maybe start to fatigue a lot sooner than that. We work with some spenders where even winning ads can fatigue in a week or two, right? Have you guys started to experience any of that yet?
Yeah, so we definitely felt the kind of pressure to create new ads and new creative a lot faster. To your point, Facebook was heavily prioritizing us when we were smaller. Now that we have, a little bit bigger size, we're not getting that same love. So it's putting a lot more challenge on the team to turn around content. The process is definitely more cumbersome as more people are getting involved and more ad spends getting, made available, especially with COVID. We're getting a lot more pressure on the back end for the metrics and really understanding what's going to be a hit, because we don't have the luxury to screw the marketing budget up, to be quite frank, because COVID kind of took away some of that, money from us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and, we mentioned it, earlier in this call, and you brought it up, but what we have found is typically the solution to both of those problems is to have really high volumes of really high quality and, importantly, high variety creative being produced at all times. In particular, you need to have ads that are created in such a way that they appeal to vastly different audiences and personality types. But at a higher level of spend, right? Particularly, we should start working with companies around that $1 million a month mark in Facebook spending. At that level, the amount of creative output you need to do to keep up with it is just too high for any internal team to realistically keep up with, which is where TubeScience comes in. So our job is to be a partner with you in the creative side of things. We have like a 3-acre large studio in downtown Los Angeles. We use everything from, simple iPhones to Red cameras that they make Marvel movies on. We got about 200 employees that are, a lot of them are on the creative producer side of things, and a lot of them are the data scientist type. So you get that mix of art and science. And together our company is producing around 3,000 video ads per week for our portfolio of customers. And each of those 3,000 videos each week has a small experiment baked into it that gives us information about what works for different types of brands and different types of personas. And all that gets saved into TubeScience's massive IP library about what works and what doesn't work. So when we're making decisions about what direction to take with your creative and what creative to produce, these decisions aren't being made off of somebody's gut feeling or somebody's ego. These decisions are being made off historical data about what has worked in the past for similar persona types that were being sought after by similar type brands as yours. So that's how you can get the quality of ad that you need. Also, since we're working with such a large team, we're able to produce a really high volume of content with a lot of variety baked into it. So our typical client is receiving 10 to 30 different ad iterations per week, which are geared at targeting 4 to 6 different personality types. So this gives you the quantity that you need, and it gives you that variety that we talked about that's so crucial for tapping into different audiences. Because using this approach, we're able to keep you strong in front of those personality types and audiences that you've always grown with, but we're also able to identify who other different persona types are that maybe were underserved in the past and start putting your ads in front of them, which is how we're able to achieve this scale. And we're doing all of this with a business model, which makes us much more similar to an investor than a vendor, because we assume all the risk of the relationship by using a purely pay-per-performance basis. So what this means is we're actually producing these videos on our own dime, right? Zero production fees. We're doing the research and development. We're coming up with the concepts. We're doing the casting, the production, the editing, the copywriting. Everything is done for you, and these ads are dropped as finished products in your Facebook Ad Manager account on pause. You just got to review them, for brand and legal compliance before you run them. The only thing that you pay us is a percentage of whatever you spend on those ads. But there's no minimum spend, no retainers, nothing like that. So what that means for you is that you only shift budget to our ads when it makes good fiscal sense to do so, right? Which is when our ads are beating your CPA or ROAS targets by our fees or greater. That's the only time you shift budget over to our ads. But of course, if, hypothetically, we put a batch of ads in your account that weren't beating your CPA and ROAS targets, there would be no commitments to any spend minimums or anything like that. So that's a bit of how the business model works. Typically, the next step is that we will do a kind of a account audit. Our analyst team will give you access to your Facebook account and we'll review what you're doing, your campaigns, your audience, stuff like that, just to make a more accurate determination as to whether or not you are actually a company that we can help. Would you like me to help you get that process started, or do you have more questions you want to cover first?
I think the one question I would really have is more about just the psychology with all these different personas, right? If you're saying you have an ad going to 4 to 6 different personas, the concern I would have there is that it's going to get diluted trying to reach so many different personas all at once. We're a little bit more focused on usually going to 1, 2 personas with ads, not 4 to 6. I'm just curious that the thinking behind that kind of a business model.
And that what you described there is typically what people do, in the lower spend levels, right? And that is the best way to optimize it. What you find when you start scaling that spend up to that, $1 million a month mark or more on Facebook is that particular personality type gets saturated. And if you're going to continue to grow and not see those CPAs skyrocket, you have to find other people, other audiences to get your ads in front of. And just to clarify here, right, at your spend level, right, I'm sure you're setting your parameters fairly wide, right, as far as, 18 to 45 US males and females, like pretty wide audiences. What the Facebook algorithm is really good at doing, though, is figuring out what type of ads different people like. So, for example, one of our clients, before we started working with them, they had, at any given time, 200 to 300 different ads running. They were a shoe manufacturer, made great hiking shoes. I actually have the shoes, interestingly enough. And 90 to 95% of their ads were a picture of a shoe with a tagline of 20% off your first order. Now, there's certain personality types that are really swayed by special offers. And there's certain personality types that are really, really taken with those stunning visual images. And that really compels action on their part. So this shoe manufacturer was doing a great job with those people. And Facebook knew that. So Facebook would put those ads in front of people Facebook knew respond to that type of ad. But obviously, there's a lot of people out there that a 20% off discount code means nothing to them, right? There's a lot of people out there where a static image doesn't really compel them. Some people want to see, actual videos of people hiking in the shoes. Some people want to see 3D renderings of the different layers of the shoe to understand on a technical basis why the shoe is so special, right? Some people want to see user-generated content of people talking about the shoe, testimonial video style. So TubeScience, through our experiences, right, and our clients we work with now, we've identified 30 to 40 different personality types that are out there that we could go after. And we've also figured out some general patterns as to what brands typically tend to work with what personality types. So part of that analysis that we do is we'll look at your Facebook account, we'll look at the content, the ads you're running, and make some pretty good educated guesses as to which personality types you're already serving and already kind of maximizing, and what audiences or personality types there your ads don't appeal to that are probably underserved. And then in those 4 to 6 batches per week, we're basically making experiments to say, all right, we're going to try a few different ads geared at this personality type, right? To figure out really where the best underserved audience is for you guys as you start to grow.
Cool. Sounds good, man. Let's get it rolling.
Cool. And that's what I got.
All right, who do we have up first? What did I say? Yeah, well, Tara, why don't you jump in and give Chris some thoughts, or sorry, Jonathan, some feedback.
Yeah. Absolutely. So first off, great job at, honestly, like you said, I wasn't even expecting you to get as far as you did in the pitch, just saying you're so new. So I think, for you being as new and really understanding the value prop and understanding like as much detail as you gave was something I wasn't expecting. So I think that's great. That said, overall, I think it can definitely be shorter, just in the let's pull some more things to the front that you actually mentioned after Chris asked his second question. Like, I think that persona going that the fact that you guys have 30 to 50 or whatever it was, information on those kind of personas and the personalities, and that you're able to glean insight. I think that you can put that really a lot higher in your pitch, because that's just fascinating data that is different. That's different from a lot of advertising and creative agencies. Couple things, I think the churn issue was a big deal, and to put that in sooner would have been helpful for me. That really painted the picture of pain, that, not just the delusion, but the churn. And also saying we have found that. So I love the fact that you're saying, hey, we are the experts. So instead of just saying we have found that, I always wonder what that means. So again, diving deeper into actually putting hard data there that we have found from 72% of our current clients, that when they do this, it increases this. So just putting, and it doesn't have to be anything super sticky, just kind of deeper dive into what does it mean we have found that. So just put some data in there, I think would help. And then also one part, when you got into the how of your studio size and all of that, I think you can get to that later, or that may be a great place to pause and ask them how they are currently creating their videos. Because what to me, that painted the picture of, wow, I am getting an actual like movie studio. It feels like when we are filming or someone's using, you know, this kind of camera or sequence, you know, something that is not the high quality that you are giving them. So I think that would be a great place to pause and just ask them how they are producing their videos now, how their ads are, or how whatever agency that they're using can do that as well. But the other thing that I think is just putting it as clearly and concisely as you can is the volume and the variety. Those are your differentiators. So the sooner you get there for them and then pause and again ask, you know, for their volume, their variety, I think that that will set you apart as well. And then so lastly, I think when you got to it with Chris about did asking him some, you know, before you got to what do you think about next steps and outlining those next steps, I think then you asked for feedback after you had already outlined that. I would pause and ask for feedback in a conversation first before outlining what next steps could look like. So that's me.
Chris, I had you next, but you had to,
Yeah.
you had to
No,
zip
it's
up.
not.
That's all right.
I'm back now. I'm back. Cool. So first off, like, dude, you know your shit. I don't think you give yourself enough credit. So I'll tell you what I like. I'll tell you like where I wish things would have been a little bit different. I'm just gonna be brutally honest because it's how I do things. So what I like is you know your stuff well. It was ungodly apparent that you knew what you were talking about. Like I had zero like questions like, does he know his product? I think you have very good tonality when you talk. It's good. So it's like it was easy to listen to you. As far as what I would have wanted differently is I think it felt a little too much talking at me. Like you're like companies like you. It was kind of like I'm talking to you, but like we're talking about like this third company that I wasn't too sure of for a little bit in the beginning of the story. And so I wish you would have just pulled me in more and talked more about like the challenges I shared with you and just made it more about me. Like I'm self-centered. I want it all about my company and what I'm going through. And if I need validation, then I would have brought in the other company pieces. So I would use the other companies as social proof and validation to give me confidence that you know what you're doing. But I wish the story would have been more about what I shared with you in that initial conversation and how that aligns with the things that are on my agenda and the problems and challenges I'm facing. And I think a little more check-in, a little more dialogue would be really nice. So asking for my thoughts, asking what does that look like in my world, or asking like, where would you like to go? That's gonna bring me into your story a lot more and I'm gonna start selling it to myself. So the trick there is get me to sell myself and make me think I'm doing it. But because of the way you phrase the questions, you're actually leading me, but I don't realize it. So that's like, I think really powerful psychology when you get into having these kinds of conversations is you want me selling myself and you're just guiding me along. I think that's, you know, that just comes up with tightening the story up a little bit and getting me to sell myself on it. And even like having me like say like, okay, so we, you know, well, you may not be a fit because you shared this. And I could be like, no, like you're totally a fit because of A, B, and C. So even doing some of that reverse psychology, like no oriented style questions, I think would really solidify it. And then before you walk like to the next steps, I think it's really just getting like my thoughts and feedback and doing that temperature check and just saying like, hey, like what potential concerns do you know, foresee getting this across your company? Because I know it's a big company, you have a lot of priorities. What are your thoughts? And just using that like open-ended kind of question so you can get a gauge of where am I and how real is this deal? Or am I just kind of kicking tires and looking at something because my VP told me to do so?
Awesome.
I know that was a lot.
That was awesome. That was good. Patrick, you got to use that mic, man.
Oh, I gotta use it. What's up, Jonathan? How you been, man?
I'm doing well, even better, and I'm hanging with you guys.
Good. It's good to have you back. And just to kind of go off of your last session, you have come a long way, man. Like, how long ago was that? 3 months ago? Not that
I
long.
was over the summer.
Yeah, and you had Scott Leese to traumatize you there too. So, I,
Cried myself to sleep that night.
yeah, I think it might have kicked in though, because the biggest improvement I saw was in your tone. I think that was a big criticism he had, was like you were very monotone. I did not feel that way this time. There was a lot of variety of your pitch and your cadence and your volume. You were going up and down to highlight certain things. Was that something you've intentionally worked on?
So one of the things I think that affected that, well, two things. So first off, I tend to be a lot more confident in this job just because it is that pay per performance type of scenario. Like it's really easy to be confident as a seller when your ask is let us make a free ad for you. Like, where in the past it was a more traditional SaaS model, right? Where I was trying to convince people to, pay up a year up front of a service. So it almost does put you in much more position of power, and that comes through in all the nonverbals. But I'd say the other things I've been working with Jordana Zeldin on dropping my sales self. So this is something that she pointed out to me, which I noticed a little bit in my podcast, that when I'm just like, chit chatting like I am now, I have a certain body language, certain tone, certain way of being. But when I start interviewing someone on a podcast or when I start talking to a prospect, I change, right? I get a lot more straight up and down, square shoulders, elevated levels of energy, a little more crisp, polished presentation of myself. And I'm much more salesperson, John. And she's been encouraging me to just be, regular John, right? And have a little bit more of a relaxed posture, a little bit more of a relaxed tone, less of a, I'm here to present and artificially inflate my energy, more of a, I'm me, right? I'm a guy who's very much led by quietness, curiosity, much more of a mind guy, less of a body guy, right? And just kind of lean into that curiosity, lean into that quiet style, lean into that, relaxed authenticity, which I usually present when I'm talking to peers. So I tried to bring a little bit of that into this pitch as well, right? And to be less of a presenter, more of a just conversationalist. And I think that might be what allowed me to add a little bit more of that tone and flex in my voice. I don't think I was intentionally doing it. But I know that's something I've been working on recently, is just being the more relaxed, regular me, less of the salesman me.
I'm a big fan of regular John, so thanks for bringing him here today. That was great, man. And you clearly know the pitch already. I mean, Chris said it. You've got it down. I feel like it was also very natural. There wasn't a lot of roboticness that I saw last time. It was just like you were talking to me, and you know everything about your service, which gave me a lot of confidence in you. The biggest thing that I'd like to see is to see you shift the pitch to a specific customer that matches your prospect and telling the entire story through one customer that's parallel to the person you're talking to. So like if you have one person that you work with that's kind of similar to the problems this person's having, you're just taking them all the way through, them reaching out to you, talking about their problems, what you were able to deliver as a solution, what the implementation was like, giving them an idea even at the end of this call what the implementation might be like, all the way through to the success they saw and why. I think that'd be really powerful. And you wouldn't need to really change it that much. You just need to make it more based around some proper nouns and some more specifics. I'd love to see that. And my other question was around visuals. Do you present with any sort of visual if you're on Zoom?
Happened before. We don't have a slide deck. This is a very, very new sales organization. So maybe one day we would, but I'll tell you, in my past company, they gave us a beautiful slide deck and I never used it. I just talked. So I don't think I would use any visuals.
I'd like to see you create one that's really simple, not necessarily like a company branded one, but specifically around, I think, the pricing model. You hit on some really interesting things your pricing model does, but I got a little lost and I would have liked to see like, here's what a normal pricing model would look like. Here's what ours is and what the difference is and how much you would actually pay per performance and highlight it. And I'd also like to see that around like the actual like videos you've produced, maybe some stills of it, what it looks like. So when you're talking about the differences, that would be great. And then maybe just like some of the logos you work with, just maybe 3 or 4 slides, keep it really simple, just so there's something there while you're speaking.
Yeah, actually, that part about like the different personas, right? A lot of times that's a sticking point that I have to explain, because typically in advertising, when you talk about like drawing audiences and demographics, you're thinking like, 30 to 36-year-old women who like Lululemon, right? Where this is different, right? This is, you leave the parameters wide open and you let kind of the Facebook algorithm figure out who likes which type of ad, but it's different than what most people are used to. So I think maybe some visuals around that, right? Here's an ad for a visual person, here's an ad for an auditory person, here's an ad for an emotional person, here's an ad for a logical person. And I think that might make it click.
I'd like to see you play one too. When I was pitching Yelp ads, I would always start with like a video, and I would send it to them. I'd have them open up the email so they're interacting with it, and I'd have them hit play and play it on their computer. So they are engaged with it, but also seeing something visually that you've produced. And two more quick things. I'd like to see you break down the pitch to micro sections with conversations in each section of the pitch. So this is the intro. This is where I give you what we do. This is the pricing section. This is the close, whatever you want to do. And have questions that you always ask that are like a bank that you can use to stimulate a conversation. Kind of like Chris was saying, I'd like to hear more back and forth. And I think that would be helpful if you did it per section. So you'd still have like your 1 or 2 minute talking points, but then you'd stop it and get their feelings. Because my problem is if I got 20 minutes through this and at the end the person's just like not interested at all, like you just wasted this time, and you also wasted an opportunity to figure out why and see if you could correct it and go in a different direction. So you need to know how they feel, especially around price. I feel like I wanted you to check in and see how they felt about that model.
Yeah, I definitely felt that as I was talking this time around, right? You know, when planning out the pitch this morning, I had a couple of questions in there and it felt about right. And then when I actually delivered it, I was like, ooh, this is a lot of friggin' talking. So I definitely agree with you guys there. It felt a little off.
It's good talking though. It's really good talking. I like you. I like you. And then also just for structure, I would say I'd like to hear like probably an upfront contract and end goal with, you know, by the end of this call, this is the expectation and this is what our implementation's like. The end goal is to prove out X, Y, or Z. And if we hit that, then the expectation is we're going to sign a contract or whatever it may be, a next step. Are you okay with that? Are you comfortable with it? And then asking them what they need to get out of the call to feel like it went successfully, and then modifying the end goal saying, and then also this, and if we achieve that, we'll do X. And then just ask them if they're comfortable with it. You get an upfront contract, and it's a lot easier to go for the close, because I actually really liked your closing statement, but I feel like it would have taken me off guard because I don't even know what the end of this call is going to be like. And you just hit me with that. I might be a little like sticker shocked or anxious around that statement. So that's all my feedback.
Awesome. Amy.
Awesome. So yeah, I have to mirror exactly what Patrick said. Like, you are completely different on this call. And I could tell that you really got behind this product. And I think that's an important thing that we don't really talk about often enough in our world. You know, it's really easy to sell a product that you can support and that you get and that you're passionate about. And you could see that all day long in your presentation, and just the fact that you were diving in so deep on what sets you apart and how you guys are better. I mean, all day long, we could tell like you really vibe with the product that you're selling. And that is huge, because that's going to push you over in all these calls, because people are going to ride that wave of like, wow, like this sounds really cool. And this guy really knows what he's talking about. And we're not doing all of that stuff. And look at all these things we're missing out on. And so kudos to you, because it was like night and day different from the last time. And I feel like your confidence was there. I love the fact that you were pointing out how you can just be you. Like, that's so big. I don't change when I sell, you know, when I'm on calls at all. I'm just as goofy and just kind of fun. And like, I mean, I'm cracking jokes constantly. I'll give you an example of that. Like, and then my personality is totally different to yours. This is how well it plays out. I had a partner that was late to a call yesterday, and, you know, I'm like giving him all kinds of crap for it, right? Like, I'm teasing him and telling him, you know, on the call, I'm like, hey man, like, we don't have any more of this product. We just sold to the last partner, like, you know. But that type of, you know, thing that I use in my personality, it goes really well in the way I sell, because I'm just being myself. And you hit the nail on the head with that. Like, it was like, I could sit down and like listen to you for hours talk about this, like with a coffee, just chilling. So totally keep riding that wave, man. Like, you're on the right path, and you're going to crush it in this new job if you keep doing that. I will say that I agree with the structuring. I think that, you know, any of this stuff that you just said, if you were bringing in and driving that further up in discovery and kind of talking about the pain points and walking down those pain points a little bit in the discovery section, and then boom, you hit them with something that's to come, like, oh, actually, I'll explain to you how we're able to, you know, help you with that problem because of this, you know, like anything to do with the studio or the way that you kind of structure your targeted ads based on demographic and how granular you get with the specifics of who you're selling to and why, the psychology behind it. I feel like this felt like this could have been all wrapped into a discovery call. Instead of like this being like a let's set next step stages call, right? This is really solid stuff to pull up further and higher in those conversations. Because when you started, like, you were like, oh, I understand your pain, right? Well, you kind of got through the questions and you've gotten through the discovery portion of it. And then this went into, well, let me tell you a little bit about us and how we do things. I feel like you could have condensed that. Like Tara made a comment about that too. The first part of your kind of your spiel when you started, we're talking about the problems with companies that are scaling and things of that nature. I feel like that's the only time where I felt like you were getting ramped up, but it was a slow ramp. And I was like, it almost felt a little too smart. Like some of the comments you made, like I think you made a comment about CPA metrics and, you know, start to suffer and all of that. I would say the only thing that I would change is dumb that down a little bit and make it a little bit more conversational, because that's the only part that I felt like you were a little weak on, was just getting yourself going. And you actually did a better job, I think, getting yourself going on the last call, because you were introducing, like you were setting the tone for the meeting, and you were also explaining like, this is what's going to happen during this call. These are the expectations at the end. These are kind of the next steps that we'll discuss. So I feel like definitely keep some of that structure in there right at the beginning, and then maybe leave off some of the higher level, you know, the higher level topics surrounding like what happens as companies are too big to sustain what they're currently doing, or figure out to be a little bit more succinct with how you were saying that. Because that's the only thing I felt like I was like sitting back, and as an executive, I probably would have been like, okay, where are we going with this? Because they already know all of that. You probably already identified that in discovery.
Yeah.
So like maybe that would have been pulling it back to, you know, you guys have already said, you know, that you've been able to scale to this point, and now you're kind of struggling with the, you know, your CPA metrics is starting to suffer, you know, kind of roll it in that way and then get yourself going, because that was the only part of it that I felt like was a little weaker than the rest. Once you got into the value prop and you got passionate about it and started talking about all of the details surrounding how you guys do what you do and why you're effective, that was gold. So yeah. Also, your backgrounds, like speaking of presentations, I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if like your Zoom background was the studio, or like maybe one of those ads that you talked about? And because I love your story and like the idea that that's your kind of like what you love, but you could transition that into using that as kind of a live canvas for your call and showing things that TubeScience is actually doing during the call. And I think that would be like just a very natural, easy way to present it without having to come up with slides. Just a thought there. But overall,
really creative.
Fantastic. Really good.
I just got two things to touch on that everybody else has already mentioned. So structure, it's just nice to kind of know what you're going to talk us through. So, you know, we're going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this, and then like kind of that upfront contract, just so people know where you're taking them. And kind of the structure, so that as you're going, you can be like, hey, this is where I told you we would be talking about, here's where we are. I think the visuals are handy. I'm not a big fan of like bullet points and death by PowerPoint, but I think like having a few good visuals to frame the conversation. So maybe it's 5 slides, maybe it's 4, but like no words, maybe like Patrick said, some things that, you know, that are hard to understand, you know, some like on the chart side. But I'm thinking like a picture of the studio, I think would be interesting, because I mean, who has their own studio? And then I think like on the talking ratio, I don't know about everybody else, but I felt like it was about, I don't know if 80-20 might be a bit much, but like, you know, Jonathan, tone, all that, everybody said it was fantastic, but I don't know. I don't think, I think you still spoke maybe too much overall.
Sure.
Yeah, like right at the beginning, that's where I felt like it was maybe too much. Like if you had gotten Chris more involved in even the very beginning of that, I feel like it would have given you a little bit more leeway to have that long kind of conversation where you're really sharing like the passion behind what you guys do. And it wouldn't have felt like it was such a long stretch of talk time. So I think just that beginning part is where, if you work on that a little bit, I think that the talk time would feel more even. And
Yeah.
at the end, Sarah suggested about asking for like the close, you know, asking questions before you actually make your close, because the close needs to be very clearly defined that, hey, this is the next step. Let's agree on the next step and move forward from this. And that's where you can kind of be a little bit more salesman, not necessarily like sleazy, but the confidence is there and knowing like, hey, this is the next natural step, right? So, but yeah, I think Francois hit the nail on the head with that, because it was a lot of talking, although it was really cool. Like I was totally vibing with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was almost like you were redoing the disco in that piece, and that's where you kind of lost me, because you were explaining the problems, you were kind of talking about it all, and I think that would have been good in a disco, but if we already did the disco, then that's where my head, where I kind of made a mental note, I was a little confused. I'm like, why are we rehashing things? I didn't need like the refresher personally. And I think if you would have pulled that whole piece out, it shortened it way down, and it's a little bit crisper and a little bit easier for me to start tracking in my mind, like, hey, got it, already understand the problem. And now we're just talking about things, you know, how this looks in my world, how you can make me look more awesome, get me promoted, whatever it would be. So I think to what Patrick's point is, coming up with that framework will really help solidify those, you know, kind of key components. You can kind of look at it and say, does this make sense given the context of the prior conversation? So I think that's where some people get tripped up, is they kind of rehash their discovery during like a demo kind of call like this. And it's just like, what, like, we already did this. And now I'm more thinking of like how, now I'm not paying attention to you, and I'm more like, well, what the hell is this pattern that I'm on right now? I think, yeah, just formatting will take care of that in a heartbeat. And then just kind of put yourself in like my shoes. Like, hey, we did this piece, we did this piece. Does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, then why am I doing it? And just kind of like that validation when you're building out your sales process, because I'm assuming you're having to build it all out as you go anyways, will kind of help to make sure it's a little bit crisper along the way too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little unsure what I want to do in that direction, right? And I think, you know, I'm going to have to play test this a few times, right? Because this is the first time that I've, you know, done a pitch divorced of the discovery piece. And I added that intro part of like spelling out what the pain points are specifically. Just because generally speaking in my sales world, I particularly found this when I was in retail sales, but even, you know, in software sales, I don't know if it makes sense to other people, but the slogan always run through my head when I'm pitching something is make them feel the void before I fill the void. Don't just assume that that pain is obvious to them and that gap is obvious to them. Really draw their attention to where that gap is, what that gap feels like, what that gap's all about before I fill that gap. So those first couple of paragraphs were me trying to make the prospect really feel the void and bring into focus that gap before I filled that gap. But I think you're right that it was too long and a little boring.
So little pivot will make a huge point. Instead of talking at me, because that felt like you were talking at me, and that's where I really disconnected. I would go be like, hey, John, so you remember when you were sharing that it's taking you 1 month to get those ads done? And that's typically what we see before clients work with us. And you're telling me that you're losing 3 weeks, which is costing you $500,000 or whatever it is. But like, pull me back in and remind me of all the pain I shared with you in that discovery. And then saying like, this is how it can map out, or like, these are the things that we're going to help solve together. So if you want to rerun me through the pain again, pull me in based off the information I shared with you and have me reconfirm it. Like, you want me to say, that's right. So go to Chris Voss style, that's right. Did I hear all that correctly? I'll do that in my slides. I'll be like, here's the top 3 challenges you shared with me. John, it's A, B, and C. Did I get that? Did I miss anything? You're like, nah, Chris, that's right. And it's like, so this is why we're here today. It's kind of like, that's what that one slide does. Like, here's why we're here today. There's usually 3 main points. I use icons just so you can so I'm implanting images into your head. I do that throughout all my decks. There's always icons and images because I am subliminally telling you, like, if you're broke right now, I use like little pennies. If you want to make a lot more money, I use big dollar signs at the end. It's this subliminal messaging right there that just makes the story stick a lot more. And I think if you roll it in like that, you're going to draw me in a lot more. And it's going to be a lot more, it's going to be shorter, but I'm also like 100% paying attention and I'm reconfirming my pain, which I think achieves the objective of that piece if I heard you correctly.
Cool. Yep. I'm loving all this, guys. Thanks so much. This is exactly what I needed.
One thing I would say is, please don't hesitate if you want to like put together and I think everybody articulated this, like, you don't need like a fancy deck, right? Like, it's a deck with some visuals, maybe your logo. And if you want to run past that with one of us to kind of test it, we're all for that. So, that's probably a piece of feedback. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got the science, no pun intended, like you got that dialed in. Now it's just like tweaking, refining. And it sounds like you got a great problem. You have more demand than you have capacity to fulfill. Is that correct?
Yep.
Is anybody else jealous?
Like, shit, come on.
I think that's bullshit, John.
People out. You should tell. That's awesome. I think, just to reiterate everything literally everybody has said, but the more I put that in the chat here, but the relaxed authenticity, I think that you lead out with that, whatever you can do, to hype yourself up, and just imagine yourself sitting there with a cup of coffee saying, hey, we're going to talk about how this problem of yours is going away. And I'm so excited in my way, in my relaxed, authentic, because you do come across as the expert. And so I'm sitting here like, most likely I'm not doing, the creatives, I'm outsourcing it. So all the creative stuff is great, but I want to know, hey, you're the expert. And that's why I'm giving this to you, because I want the ROI. I want that benefit. So the more I can see myself in your solution, and really just at the end of the day, I'm like, I want to trust you to make this work. Like, I want all of that to be the end story, that yes, you're getting me in the pain and you're helping me see it, but just remember who you're talking to and what they really want. So as you're thinking about what details do I maybe move out, or what can I use a visual for, if I'm getting, like you said, you were getting kind of stuck on some verbiage around some things, I think that would be a great sign of just like, maybe a picture can work. But at the end of the day, just remember, like, hey, these are people who just want you to be your relaxed self and be the expert. And everything that you painted to us says to me clearly, I know you, I like you, and I trust you. So now it's just, how can we move to this making sense for me, which I think Chris has nailed, which I want to see me in that story. I want my data. I want my pain. I want all of that. And even if literally you take your paragraphs, because I think the entire thing that you said literally can be your entire call, except for maybe the first few minutes as you're uncovering that pain. But if you literally just break it down into those pieces and into that structure, and then end each with just a question of like, what does this mean for you, or a story, or an example of them, of me, of the person in the shoe, that everything you said can still work in some capacity. But again, you're the expert. And so I think the more that you control that conversation, talking with the person, you're going to crush it. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, I know Patrick and I have to jump pretty quick here. Any other final comments for Jonathan, or Jonathan, any questions for us?
Come back again, man.
Yeah.
I want to see round 2. So like that's only like, it's not a question or a comment. It's just like, challenge. You got the feedback. Now let's see you take action. Even if you just email us, LinkedIn, or I really don't care how you distribute it. I just want to see what round 2 looks like. So I'm curious and I'm invested now. So I expect round 2. That's my only thing.
All right.
Let's go.
I love it. It's Thanksgiving in Canada, so I'm wishing everybody a happy Canadian Thanksgiving.
That sounds fake. I don't believe
Francois,
it.
we're so thankful for you. We're so thankful for you, buddy. That's awesome.
So thankful.
Enjoy it. Do you guys eat like traditional like Thanksgiving foods? Like Thanksgiving, or is it like
polar bear and squirrel?
I mean, if that's what you're hunting.
It's the same
my
thing. It's turkey, pumpkin pie, family arguments.
Yes.
Sounds about right.
Except for we don't have politics in ours.
Smart.
Just talk about ours. It'll be fun. We totally got it nailed this year. We know what we're doing.
Oh, we got it.
God, 2020.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a
Bye,
lot.
everybody.
Awesome, guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks for jumping on. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.